Okay. So Job chapter 24. Now, let's remind ourselves that it's good to do a little review. It won't take 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes. So the book of Job starts with 2 chapters, gives you the whole scenario. Chapter 3, the rant and raving of Job. After that, you get the 3 men in order. Eliphaz speaks, then Job. Bildad, then Job. Zophar, then Job. Then you go to round 2. Eliphaz speaks, then Job. Bildad speaks, then Job. Zophar speaks, then Job. Round 3, Eliphaz speaks, then Job is speaking now. Next, we get to Bildad, and then Job will start. But when Bildad speaks, that's the last we'll hear of them. I think, in fact, when Bildad speaks in chapter 25, you realize they're just getting tired. They're just done with it. We've had enough of this. I mean, it's overwhelming talking about it. So Job is that man that he's in the midst of trouble because they're giving up on Job. We can't change him. He's just going to be lost. We give him the word of God. He won't believe it, and that's it. And Job is just, they think his dialogue is with them only. His dialogue is with God too. So Eliphaz went through his issues last week. And then we go to Job in chapter 23 and chapter 24 we'll begin tonight. Chapter 22, we heard from Eliphaz. So anyway, here we go. Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar. Round 2, Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar. Round 3, Eliphaz. And before we get to Bildad, Job's response. It's like there's always an order. Eliphaz speaks, then Job. Bildad, Job. Zophar, Job. Then they do the same thing again. But in this round here, the last round, Eliphaz speaks, and now Job is speaking, and then Bildad will go in chapter 25. So in chapter 24, by the way, many of the things that these guys are accusing Job of, they're really making sense. Hey, wicked people ain't going to get ahead. God's going to bring in justice. Well, that's absolutely true. Many of the things they say are true. It just doesn't apply to Job. The principles is right, but they're putting the wrong application. Much like sometimes you think that way, it really isn't that way, and you have to be careful. Chapter 24. Why? Seeing times are not hidden from the Almighty. Do they know him? Do they know him? Do they that know him see not his days? Do you not see that? Do you not understand? His remarks here is about how wicked people are. Some remove the landmarks. They violently take away the flocks and feed thereof. They drive away the ass or donkey of the fatherless, and they take the widow's ox for a pledge. They turn the needy out of the way. Wait a minute, Job. I mean, that's what we've been saying all along. You know what Job is saying? That's right. That's what bad people are like that. You see, Job is agreeing with them on what they're saying. It just doesn't apply to him. You're right. Bad people, bad things are going to happen. God's going to get you. But it's not that way, you know? Wicked people seem like they get by with it. Well, Job, you got by with this for years, but now judgment has come. No, you're right. Wicked people do this. Why? Seeing the times are not hidden from the Almighty. Why do those who know him see not his days? Some remove the landmarks and all the bad things they do. Verse 8. Verse number, let's see. Yeah, verse number 5. Behold, the wild asses are donkeys in the desert. Go they forth to their work, rising betimes for a prey. The wilderness yieldeth food for them and for their children. They reap everyone his corn in his field. They gather in the vintage of the wicked. They get plenty. Wicked people do get by. They get a lot of things for themselves. Verse number 7. They cause the naked to lodge without clothing, and they have not no covering in the cold. They take from people. They do what they want, anything they like, right? They go out in their work searching for food. The wilderness yields food for them and for their children. They always seems like they come up roses. I mean, if you saw what happened in the past couple of days, how many have been following Elon Musk? Yeah. He bought Twitter. You know, they would never sell to him. They sold, didn't they? You know, what was the movie that I forget the name of it, where the guy told him, he said, you know, you sold your football team? It's worth $8 million. He offered 20 millions. What did you say? I said yes. You know, they couldn't turn down the money. But why would you give it to Elon Musk? By the way, you see how much money the guy's got? He just bought something for $44 billion. He's got that kind of money. Is he a righteous man, a good church-going man, talks about how much he loves the Lord, loves Jesus? Do not wicked men get ahead in the world? Yeah. And it seems like they get more and more. They got pleasure, they got ease. They get by with everything. They get everything, don't they? Well, that's what he says. In verse 8, he says, they are wet with the showers of the mountains and embrace the rock for want of a shelter. He says, look, these guys, these are wicked people. They pluck the fatherless from the breast and take the pledge of the poor. They cause him to go naked without clothing. They take away the sheep from the hungry. They pretty much make money off of other people. By the way, if you know how many people make money off other people, anybody see how much the board members made on Twitter? It was like $250,000 a year. But they were just board members. They just sat and oversaw stuff. The real work was done by the council, done all the work, paying themselves. It was up. So.
Them boys don't make much money. You know what? Ginger Z on the news makes a year? $600,000 a year.
Who?
Ginger Z.
Who is Ginger Z?
She's the chief meteorologist for ABC News.
Oh, 600 grand a year. So again, you can make money off of poor people, right? Can you make money off of poor people? You sure can. Just show me a television that's got a religious channel. You'll see somebody making money off of poor people, and they will do it. Put it on a credit card. Send it, sow your seed, and come up with a gimmick. The last one I saw was 43, and he read some obscure passage where it said 43. God laid it on my heart to tell you that if you'll sow 43, it's a number. And the other guy sitting there will agree with him, so it gives credibility. And they banter back and forth, making money off the poor. That's what he means by this here. Which he says, the sheep from the hunger, which make oil within their walls and tread their wine presses and suffer thirst. Men groan from out of the city, and the soul of the wounded cries out. Yet God layeth not folly to them. God doesn't put it on them, doesn't hurt them. God doesn't charge them with any wrong. They get away with everything. Job is agreeing with him. There are bad people, and it seems like nothing bad happens to them. Verse number 13, they are of those who rebel against the light. They know not the ways thereof, nor abide in the paths thereof. The murderer, rising with the light, killeth the poor and needy, and in the night is as a thief. Yes, him. The eye also of the adulterer waiteth for the twilight, saying, no eye shall see me, and disguiseth his face. Speaking about wicked people, how they get away with things, he says here, they're rising with the light, killeth the poor. Then in the evening, nobody sees them. In the dark, verse 16, they dig through houses which they had marked for themselves. In the daytime, they know not the light. Talking about doing things in darkness. And they case the joint. That's what we'd say today. In the daytime, find out what you're going to rob, and then at night, they rob you. For the morning is to them even as the shadow of death. If one know them, they are in terrors of the shadow of death. They try to do everything in darkness. They don't want the light. That's when they do their dirty work. You know, my dad used to say nothing good happened after 11 o'clock, so be home. Did y'all's daddies tell y'all that too? I think we all did, didn't we? Yeah, we always knew that. You don't stay out late. Why? Bad things happen. You know, I remember the poor girl that died. How many of them have died 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning? Young women out, and then something happens. You're like, we got to find out who did it. Why would you be out that time of night? These are bad people. You hang around, you're at a club with your friends at 1 or 2 in the morning, and then something bad happens, and it's like, that should never happen. Bad people are out at night. We've forgotten to teach our children that. Well, it's okay. They're just expressing themselves. Something bad happens, it'll still be somebody else's fault. They never take blame to say, I should have taught my child, baby, when it gets done, be at home at night, don't go out, or make it safe places. Don't go to clubs, don't go to bars, don't go to places like this. And by the way, bad things happen when there's alcohol and drugs. You know that? It does. Well, nobody drinks that. They're high when they get there, Do things in the dark. Well, that's when bad things happen. Well, the morning unto them is even as the shadow of death. Well, Job is agreeing. Here's what happens. Now, by the way, what Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar have said, he's saying the exact same thing. Verse 18. He says, he is swift as the waters. Their portion is cursed in the earth, and beholdeth not the way of the vineyards. Drought and heat consume the snow waters, so doth the grave those which have sinned. This coming to them. The wicked are going to be punished. Just as the snow turns to water, the grave will get those that have sinned. The womb shall forget him. The worm shall feed sweetly on him. Talking about in the ground. He's going to die. He's going to get what's coming to him. He shall no more be remembered, and wickedness shall be broken a tree. That's what they said about Job, what had happened to him. But Job is agreeing with them. Hey, you're right. It just has no application to me. He said, that's what they just don't understand. Everything points to Job, but he knows I'm innocent. I am innocent. But he's agreeing with them. He evil entreateth the barren that beareth not, and doth good, not good to the widow. He draweth also mighty with his power. He riseth up. No man is sure of life. They think like they're going to get by with it, right? And that verse number 22 says, he draws mighty with his power, rises up, and no man is sure of life. He says, though it be given him in the safety, whereupon he rested, yet his eyes are upon their ways. God sees who they are. They think they're okay, but the eyes of God know who they are. Verse 24. These people are exalted for a little while. They are exalted for a little while, but are gone and brought low. They are taken out of the way, and as all other, and cut off as tops of the ears of corn. That's what's going to happen. It will happen. God doesn't overlook them. And if it be not so, now who will make me a liar and make my speech nothing worth? Any of you can contend with this here, call me a liar. What was that movie? The guy, he said, all right, now call me a liar. Can you? No, you can't. They can't argue with this. They know that he can't argue with this. But Job is saying the same thing they said. Eliphaz, he's making the reference to Eliphaz. Now we're about to talk about Bildad in verse number 20, in chapter 25. And chapter 25, when we finish it, no more of the three friends. Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar. We will not hear from them anymore. This is it, except in the end when God makes the retribution and set things right. But they're done talking. And Bildad, if you notice, how many verses in chapter 25? It's a short chapter in it. It's like, we're tired of this. We're not getting through to him. You can't make him believe the truth. We're done with it. Chapter 25. Then answered Bildad the Shuhite and said, dominion and fear are with him. Look here. He maketh peace in his high places. Dominion and fear are with him. He maketh peace in his high places. Is there any number of his armies upon whom doth not his light arise? Bildad says, Job, you're wrong. The truth is, God's going to get you. God's going to take care of this. Dominion or fears are with him. That's God. He makes peace in his high places. Is there any number of his armies? Is there any number of his armies? Can you number his armies? And upon whom doth not his light rise? You can't have any more armies than he's got. And his light's on everything. He sees it all. Is there any number of his? No, you can't number. Verse 4. How then can man be justified with God? How can you justify yourself, Job? Now, Job would look at him and say, you're right. I'm not trying to justify myself. Job has never, ever said that I'm a perfect man. He hasn't. He just says, for this, I've done nothing wrong. And by the way, I don't know if it's dawned on you yet, but what hit me this past week was this. This is a contest between God and Satan. But I wonder, was God saying, no, I want a contest between Job and his friends so they can have the dialogue and figure out. They know a lot about God, but what about applying it? How do you make the life application? And he lets them exhaust the whole thing, trying to figure it out from their own thought process. And the men go from the material. You lost all this. We've seen this. Days of old. That's what's happening. Job is saying, I know what you're saying, but I know this is not what I've not done anything to deserve this. I know myself and I know God, but I can't get God to come and talk to me. Well, God ain't talking to you because you're wrong. But no, God is. So he's having that dialogue with God, but they're having to go at each other. Maybe it's these friends, man is learning something. Job would prove to Satan who he was. And by the way, proving it to Satan doesn't help any. You know why? Is Satan going to ever change? No. So why would God do this to Satan, knowing good and well, Satan, hey, if you consider my servant, ain't nobody like him. Well, you got all that stuff you've given him, take away his blessing, he'll curse you. All right. What about now? Well, you touch his body, it won't, but don't kill him. But you can touch his body. I'll prove it to you. He's never going to believe it. God knows that. So it has to be the dialogue that is between the friends and Job for a man to look at it. When a man knows I've not done anything, but people to think about how we think every day, and we put it in the life of another person and say, this is what we've seen, as opposed to saying, in the Bible, it says this. Job is using standard scripture, and he's agreeing with them so much because what he just got through saying is agreement with it. Bildad's on his last discourse, and it seems as though the problem is these men will never believe the truth, but they will later on. Satan's never going to get it. So really the contest begins in heaven, but continues on the earth. It begins in heaven. Have you considered Job? There's nobody like him on the earth. These guys, hey, Job, you're a sinner. No, I'm not like that. I'm like God thinks I am. I'm not like that. It's the same contest. It's something I've been thinking on as I've gone through this, that really because Satan will never change. He will always be the devil. He's never going to believe the truth. No matter how much truth you give him, he's never going to believe it, which is what we talk about when you deal with people who are lost. Many times you give them more truth, they will not believe it because it's not about the truth. It's a moral, right and wrong is a moral issue.
Question. Could this process with Job and these three guys be related to the three temptations? I mean, we got Job here, Christ, and we got these three guys that's trying to convince Job that he's messed up.
That's a good point. Yeah, and he's done absolutely nothing wrong. It's a very good analogy. Christ did nothing wrong, yet he was accused. They brought the false witnesses against him. He was called a winebibber. He eats with publicans. He claims to be the Son of God, but there was never anything wrong with him. But you got to remember, but of course, he never defended himself, right? But he did during his ministry, but at the end of his life at the cross, he never defended himself. But he would during his lifetime say, who convinces me of sin? Hey, I'm not wrong. You're wrong. You're of your father, the devil. It's a good point. That's a good point. Because this teaches you from the man's standpoint how they butt heads and trying to figure something out. But when you got somebody's got it in their head, they believe it. And what happens? 1 versus 3. Well, 3's right, 1 had to be wrong. You know, he's only by himself. We got 3 people, and a majority rule, we voted on it, right? That's what we do in churches now. By the way, you go to the average church in this county and tell me if they don't vote on something, it becomes a law in the church. And it's not biblical. You got to come to agreement with this book. You can't. But we've brought in democracy into our churches to decide if something is right or wrong. You can't do it. It's Brother Harris, you'll never have a church like that. You're right. We sure won't. But it's still the truth. It's still the truth. Job is saying, I'm sorry, but this is the way it is. Bildad said, no, you're wrong. How can a man be justified with God? Or how can he clean that's born of a woman? You're not clean. Job never claimed to be clean. He never said I'm perfect. But they're looking at him like, you think you're perfect, don't you? No, I'm not perfect. I didn't do anything to deserve this. But I'm not a perfect man. He never claimed to be. But they're going after him tooth and nail, and Bildad just hits him straight. You can't be justified. And Job would agree with that. And even I would say, you know what? How then can a man be justified with God? You and I both know that is one of the most accurate statements ever made. You can't be justified with God. He's right. Listen to that next line. How can a man be justified with God? Or how can he be clean that is born of a woman? You can't. They're telling the truth. It just doesn't apply to Job. Because Job is not saying he's clean. Job is just saying what's happened to me is not because of sin. Whereas they're saying, no, there's trouble in your life. It's got to be sin. So, but you would agree with what he's saying here. Much of what the three friends say is absolutely true. And again, this is the old ploy. You got to be careful with the premise you start on. When you start on a bad premise, it's going to be bad regardless. Have you ever done that before? Now, maybe y'all haven't done this. Some things in the kitchen will do that, but Brother Andre's got a great analogy. When you start with a bad foundation, it destroys it. Have you ever broke a combine down and put it back together and had one piece off? When you got to, it's like, it won't work. I got to turn it all back down. Have you ever done that? And it doesn't work. The whole, no matter how much everything else fits right, that one thing, like that bolt had to go through this way. Otherwise, it's sticking out too far and it's going to hit that chain. I just remember working on tractors. Combines were always to me so complex and those things, but farmers never could afford to say, well, if it turns out, oh, call the man. No, you fix your own things. But one thing out of place, the foundation has to be right. You start off right, the rest is okay. On the way down here, my wife looked out, by the way, remember May 27th, 28th to June the 3rd, prettiest time of the year. This beautiful ground you'll ever see, farmland. Beautiful. I want to get that in because I'm going to tell you it's my favorite time of the year. When I could walk across the farm, going over that hill, and you could see it. The corn's a little high, but everything else about this tall, oh, it done beans and cotton, so pretty. But anyway, on the way down here, my wife, I said, look out there, baby. I said, you see how straight them rows are? Because I know what they got now. They got that GPS, and it'll set that line. And I was telling her how much on the old Maxton Highway, I remember the day we had a 404 farmer with them tricycle wheels in the front, and the gas cap had an arrow on it. Daddy would turn it the right way. You remember that? And he'd say, boy, he was teaching me how to plant. And I had a two-road planter, had a chain. You remember the chain? You pull it and let that arm down on the markers. And he said, now you pick out a limb down there. He said, don't you worry about going next to that highway. Pick one that's close to it. And he showed me where to look at. He said, now don't leave it. He says, you can blink your eyes every now and then, but be careful. Don't hardly blink. But don't look at anything on the other side until you get to the end. I was amazed. It was straight. I couldn't believe it. I said, Daddy, that's pretty good. He said, but son, if that one ain't right, the rest of them all have a crook in it. And they're straight. But that's it. If you don't have the first one right, the rest is wrong. When your foundation, it says, well, I saw somebody had something bad happen to them. They must have sinned. When you start with that, you're wrong. It's wrong. The foundation is wrong. And everything you say after that will have trouble with it. Even though there'll be a lot of truth in it, it won't hold water. The foundation must be sure. How can I get saved? Well, I go to church every Sunday. I do this. I pray. I teach. Did you ever get saved? Did you go to Jesus? Did you ever confess your sin? Well, no. The foundation's unsure. In fact, he says, no other foundation can any man lay than that which is laid, which is Christ Jesus. 1 Corinthians 3, verse 11. He can't. These three guys are on the wrong premise. And all these things they're saying are true. Doesn't matter because they've started with the wrong foundation. So you would say that's true. Behold, even to the moon, and it shineth not. Yea, the stars are not pure in his sight. He said, look, the celestial beings and all those things, nothing is pure in his sight. How much less that there's a worm and the Son of Man, which is a worm. You're nothing but a little old worm, and that's what you are. You're dirty. If the celestial beings, and they're not pure, you know you're just a worm. And you're like that. You're like a worm in the ground. You're not pure. Nobody ever said that. And you would agree with everything Bildad is saying. But he's been saying this same thing over. I mean, you almost, I said ad nauseum. You just get nauseous thinking, am I going to hear this again and again and again and again? It's the same old thing. But right now, we're done. No more. No more. We've talked about these guys. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. He's already quit talking. He just gave up. Each time. And now Job is going to speak. And he's going to speak through chapter 31. He's giving a long discourse. But Job starts off on chapter 26. But Job answered and said, but Job said, how hast thou helped him that is without power? How hast thou an arm that's no strength? You know, it's kind of like he's looking at all of his friends, and they've kind of just given up on him, you know? They've kind of gotten in, it's like, he can't do nothing with him. He ain't going to change. But they're done. You won't read anything else about their accusing Job or trying to change him. But Job says, hey, can I ask y'all a question? Have you helped him who is without power? Have you saved the arm of him that has no strength? What y'all been doing? Is that any good? Verse number 3. How hast thou counseled him that hath no wisdom? How hast thou plentifully declared the thing as it is? I mean, have y'all really helped anybody? Have you really done any good? You spouted off and spouted. You've done absolutely no good. I got a friend. He's dead and gone now, but I used to love him for one thing. When there was controversy, he could always squelch it, you know? So if he got the floor, he'd talk on it some, but he could talk 15 minutes and say absolutely nothing. That's just the way it was. But by that time, everybody's kind of cooled off a little bit. Just the way it was. I loved it for that. He could talk on nothing, but he's like, you guys are saying nothing. Who have you helped? Have you counseled anybody to help them? Hast thou counseled him that hath no wisdom? Have you declared good advice? No. To whom hast thou uttered words? Whose spirit came before thee? In other words, Eliphaz, that's the one who started off and he said, hey, Job, I know what I'm talking about. You ever had a spirit to come before you, boy? That's what I have with me. And I know he's making a reference here to Eliphaz about what he spoke early on about. I think it was Eliphaz, the spirit came up before his eyes. He was shaking. I had an experience with God. But Job's like, my friends, you are no benefit. You don't help anyone. No, not at all. You've done nothing. Dead things are formed from under the waters and the inhabitants thereof. By the way, he's talking about bad, about evil. He says, hell or Sheol is naked before him, and destruction hath no covering. God's power will take care of all. You guys haven't helped me one bit. You're not helping the poor. You don't help the person of no wisdom. None at all. He hath stretched out the north over the empty place and hangeth the earth upon what? Nothing. God's power, let me tell you, he hangs the earth on nothing. By the way, the earth is hung on nothing. I'm so sorry. I was going to bring that thing. Becky, remind me. We got to buy one of them things. I can't believe y'all broke what was that? My globe. I want to bring it because where do we find it? But it's magnetism, but of course it just, once you hold it right and get the right area, it'll kind of let go, it'll stay, and it's in midair, and you put your finger up there, cross it all around it, but it'll sit there and it'll spin. I think God hangs everything in midair. So it's got a reason behind it, sure. He created the reason for it too. But God is that powerful person. Job has got his faith in God. He knows who God is. Have you counseled me? Let me tell you, I already know who God is. Have you given good counsel? I already know him. I know God. He bindeth up his waters in his thick clouds, and the cloud is not rent under them. No, he holdeth back the face of his throne, and spreadeth his cloud upon it. Right? It says, he hath compassed the waters with bounds until the day and the night come to an end. Verse 11, the pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his reproof. The very pillars of heaven that hold it up are astonished at his reproof. And he divideth the sea with his power, and by his understanding he smiteth through the proud. He breaks up. He takes and smites the proud. By his spirit he hath garnished the heavens. His hand hath formed the crooked serpent. And of course, if that's a reference, we're talking about a crooked serpent. What does it say in NIV? Does it say a crooked serpent in verse number 13? The gliding serpent. And of course, we have those references in the scripture to these serpents of the sea, the leviathans, etc. Lo, these are part of his ways. These are just part of them, he says. But how little portion is heard of him. You guys don't understand God. I do. Job begins chapter 26. He says, look, but Job answered and said, how hast thou helped me? I already know what I need to know about God. I understand this. Lo, these are parts of his ways. It's just you're just scratching the surface of who God is. But the thunder of his power, who can understand? Who can know it? Job is claiming, you guys have not helped me. I know God. I know how he is. I trust him. And he continues on in his rendition here now, okay? Because now, if you look in chapter 27, ready? 28, 29, 30, 31. Then chapter 32. Okay? We got this other guy that comes into place. And then we got to go on and on and on until you get to chapter 38 when God speaks up, right? But we got until chapter 31 where he's going to speak and he's just simply responding to them. So I won't take a lot of time in going in explanation because it's saying much of the same thing. But let's move on. Moreover, in addition to this, he says, moreover, Job continued his parable and said, as God liveth, who hath taken away my judgment? And the Almighty, who hath vexed my soul? All the while my breath is in me. The Spirit of God is in my nostrils. By the way, he'll talk about God, how he saves him, and then say, God kills me too. It's like Job goes back and forth, but he says, I know these things are true. One, who hath taken away my judgment? And the Almighty, who hath vexed my soul? While my breath is in me, and the Spirit of God is in my nostrils, my lips will not speak wickedness, nor my tongue utter deceit. In fact, God forbid that I should justify you. Till I die, I will not move my integrity from me. Woo, that's powerful. No, you guys, listen. As God took away my justice, right? He said, but God forbid if I ever agreed with you and told you were right. Now, I want to take away something from this one line here. He says, God forbid that I should justify you. Till I die, I will not remove mine integrity from me. I will not justify you and tell you that you're right. Till the day I die, I retain my integrity. I know in whom I have believed, and that he is able to keep that which that was committed unto me against that day. You know you're saved. And the one thing that they can't take from you is that you know who he is and that you're born again. Man can take your wife, your husband, your children. He can take your job. He can take your health. Man can even take your life, but he'll never take your salvation. And you'll die with the integrity of knowing, I'll never justify you and tell you that you're right for what you said about me. I retain my integrity. I know my standing with God. When they tell you you're not saved and you can go, we have to say a man can feel comfortable. That's a real man that can wear a pink shirt. Remember you used to say that? Yeah, a real man, he's comfortable in his masculinity. Well, a real Christian can look at somebody when they tell them they're not saved, say, yeah, you're right, I'm not saved. Oh, I shouldn't say something like that. That might make something bad about me. No, you know what a real Christian does? You agree with the adversary. You're not going to change him. You know, when you get in that debate, as God wants us to do now, and to say, you know what, this is a sin. Can't do it. It's not right. Well, you just don't love people. Y'all Christians supposed to love people. Well, I do love people. No, you're not. You call yourself a Christian. Are you saying I'm not a Christian? Yeah, I'm saying, okay, I'm not a Christian. That's still wrong. You can't judge me. Okay, I'm telling you, it's what it is. You don't love nobody. You're right. I don't love people. I'm just going to agree with you. I'm confident in my salvation. I'm not. It doesn't hurt me one bit. And I can tell you the truth. Retain your integrity. You know that God saved you. And because of that, hey, just agree with him. And Jesus said this. Agree with the adversary when you're in the way with him. They're not going to believe the truth, right? He says, you cast not your pearls before the swine. You know what he means by that? Stop giving people the word of God that it's like giving pearls to swine. They don't want it. You've told them, they're angry with you, they're mad with you. They don't want to hear it. Walk away. They might be lost. You're right. They may be lost. That's my responsibility. No, it's never your responsibility. Your responsibility is not to get people saved. Your responsibility is to do what God tells you to do, and they'll be saved. I put those two together, you'll understand the order in which that comes. But be confident in your integrity that you know that you're saved. My righteousness I hold fast and will not let it go. My heart shall not reproach me so long as I live. Job had his integrity. You know what it is? You're the young boy. You messed up at school. You was at the schoolhouse. You did something and it was wrong. And you knew it was wrong and everybody knew it. And as a young Christian, what are you going to do? And sure enough, you get in that juniors class at church on Sunday, and the teacher never says this. How many have we got in here that's saved? And you raise your hand. And everybody laughs at you. But you know good and well God's forgiven you. And you won't take it down because you know who you are. You know your integrity. That's what Job is dealing with here. You know who you are. I hold fast and will not let it go. No. So Job is this chain. I'm different from all the others. And you are different than number 7. You're different from them. Number 7, let mine enemy be as the wicked. And he that rises against me as an unrighteous. You know what he's talking about now? He's talking about his friends. Y'all's a bunch of hypocrites. You say you love God, look how you treated me. You treated me wrong. You knew that I wasn't like that. But because you saw what you saw, because of your belief system, you put it upon me. No. Let mine enemy be as wicked. They that rise up against me as unrighteous. For what is the hope of the hypocrite? Though he hath gained when God taketh away his soul. What has he got? Nothing. Will God hear his cry when trouble cometh upon him? That's a rhetorical question. No. Will he delight himself in the Almighty? Will he always call upon God? No. God is telling him, he's saying here, no, you guys have done wrong. They're hypocrites. Job knows himself, and Job's comfortable in it. He's comfortable in that. They've done wrong, not him. God is not going to hear you. Verse 11, I will teach you. I will teach you by the hand of God. He says, I want to tell you 3 friends. Can I tell you about who God is? You just don't know God. I saw God last night in a different light. I saw God provoking a man for a long time. 10 times he provoked him. Thought it was through with. And then God leads the people out, and he didn't lead them on one way. He said, I know how these people are. These Christians, they're young Christians. They'll probably go back to Egypt. I better put them this way so they don't get in a fight. God just taking care of his people. And then he puts them right there at the Red Sea, and he puts them there in the middle of nowhere. And he says, oh, don't go no further. Just stay here in camp. I got you took care of. And Pharaoh's like, I can see him. I'm going to go get him. God provokes people. You know what the Bible says? God is angry with the wicked every day. Yet he's filled with mercy, isn't he? But you rest assured that God is standing in the way. As the donkey asked Balaam, why are you hitting me? And there was the angel of the Lord saying, you hit me out of. You think God's not like that? That's him. You don't think God's against the wicked? You've never seen him. Read the scriptures. God is angry with the wicked. But he says, let me have the vengeance. I will destroy him. But let me have it, because I'll be also the one. If I see a glimmer of change, it's all forgotten. I got mercy. Come on, I'll take you in. That's the way God is. That's why you want him in charge of justice. But he says, you people, I'll teach you about the hand of God, that which is the Almighty, and will I not conceal. I ain't going to hold back one thing. Behold, all ye yourselves have seen it. Why then are you thus altogether vain? What, brother, you got NIV? What does it end of that verse say? Verse number 12. Why are you thus altogether vain? Yeah, it's utter nonsense. All you guys have done is just absolutely nonsense. It's just, you're uttering just words that make no sense. You blah, 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 and it doesn't mean anything. Why this utter nonsense? Why are you thus altogether vain? That means empty. This is the portion of a wicked man with God and the heritage of oppressors, which they shall receive of the Almighty. What is that portion of the wicked man with God? The heritage of the oppressors. If his children be multiplied, it is for the sword. And his offspring shall not be satisfied with bread. Those that remain of him shall be buried in death. And his widows shall not weep. They won't weep for him. Though he heap up silver as the dust, and prepare raiment and the clay, he may prepare it, but the just shall put it on, and the innocent shall divide the silver. No, wicked men are going to suffer. He says, let me clarify you and tell you how God really is. So Job is telling the truth from the foundation of absolute right. But you notice what Job is saying and what the three friends were saying have a lot of similarities. But Job has the foundation right. These guys don't. You got preachers. They seem like they're saying the same passage, same script. They're saying the same thing. It's got the right foundation. These don't. That's why they deviate. How do you know when they're deviating? Well, you read the Bible? Well, I go to Sunday school sometimes. Yeah. Don't know it, do you? Don't. Well, I know God. You can't tell me I don't know God. You do know him. Do you know him fully? Do you want to know more about him? Do you hunger and thirst for righteousness that you may be filled? And then you'll know what error is. You'll know what it looks like, right? No, he said, I'll tell you who God is. I'll let you know. Wicked people, yeah, they are not going to make, they can heap up that silver like clay. They can put on, the innocent will put it on. Look at verse number 18. He says, he buildeth his house as a moth and as a booth, and the keeper maketh. The rich man shall lie down, but he shall not be gathered. He openeth his eyes. What? He is no more. He's nothing. Terrors take hold of him as waters. The tempest stealeth him away in the night. The east wind carrieth him away, and he departeth, and his storm hurleth him out of his place. For God has cast upon him and not spare. He would not fain flee his hand. No. You can't. You can't get away from God. For God shall cast upon him and not spare. Men shall clap their hands at him and shall hiss him out of his place. He flees desperately from his powers. Wicked people are going to be destroyed. Now, that's the same thing they've all been saying. But Job is putting it from my standpoint. Let me give you the truth. Stand before the people and say this. We should not be teaching this. By the way, I'm really disturbed about what they're proposing to teach in our classrooms morality. And by the way, the school boards are immoral. They are agreeing with this thing about teaching sexuality in the school. It has never been right. That's mom and dad's job. Well, if we don't, who's going to do it? I promise you, you will never have to teach it. They'll learn it on their own. And they'll be better on their own without you trying to tell them. They've been trying to stop teenage pregnancy for years. Can't do it. They've been trying to stop sexually transmitted diseases. They can't do it. You know why? Because they got the wrong foundation. They think that people just need more education and it'll make a difference, make it better. They don't need a better education. They know the truth. They don't want to do the truth. I know what's right. And I think of all those years of, even in my high school days, they would teach you things like, why you say that? Well, if we just teach them enough, they'll know what's right and they'll do better. It has never been that way. They're just blinded like these three friends. They don't have the foundation right, that man is evil, and the only thing going to stop him is punishment. Well, if you take away his freedom, well, what happens when that doesn't work? You have to cause pain. Take away what he likes, you know? You know, I thought about it. Well, how do you stop these people from doing this? You know, we got churches that get broke into, schoolhouses. I was one last night. My wife and I listened to TV, and it was a church. Was it the church van? Was it the schoolhouse? They're cutting the catalytic converters off of these places everywhere. I mean, you know what it costs to get a catalytic converter now? Church got to pay for it. People losing their houses, and they'll go into school and they'll steal it. When they get caught, what happens? Nothing. You get these guys that they've been drunk driving and drunk driving and drunk driving. They've been lost their license. They go back to the court system. 30 days in jail, they're back out again. They do it again. They never stop. Why not cut his hand off like they do in them other places? Would it stop it? Would it be a deterrent? What if you cut a man's hand off and cut both of them off will he drive anymore? So next time we're going to cut off a leg. Yeah, they'll quit. You know what? And everybody else will look, I ain't doing that. That's drastic now. But my point is this. Something has to be done to stop it. But you're taking him and saying, no, man is evil. You can't just take away his freedom. Don't put him in jail down the road. Put him in some other place. You know? Take him to some state far, far away. Put him in Alaska with the cold weather. Or better yet, what was the guy? The guy that had the tent city out there in Arizona. Arapahoe. Remember Joe Arapahoe back 15, 20 years ago? The guy that had the tents and didn't build the jailhouse and dyed all their clothes the same color and gave them coloring books to show them how to do exercises. And nobody, and guess what? He kept getting reelected because nobody wanted to go to jail there. That's punishment. Well, foundation has to be right. These men got the wrong foundation. By the way, man is inherently evil. The heart is, Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. Desperately wicked his heart is. But when you put the right deterrence there, that's why God created human government. That's why God tells us in Romans chapter 13, verse 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that you have to obey the laws of the land. And the laws of the land have capital punishment. The sword, he cuts your head off. It's not in vain. He bears that sword. So do what's right. God created government for a reason. These guys were at the wrong place, doing the wrong way. Job says, I will tell you, because my foundation is sure. Chapter 28, surely there is a vein for the silver and a place of the gold where they fine it, or where they refine it. Iron is taken out of the earth. Brass is molded out of stone. He setteth on an end to darkness, and searcheth out all perfection, the stones of darkness and the shadow of death. Now, this is talking about these are elements in the ground, right? Man searching for more gold. You know, what is that? Monopoly millionaire and scratch offs, and you know how you want to get your money, you know, to make some money. No, searching. By the way, the gold rush was 1898, the gold rush when they had, and everybody went to the Klondike trying to find gold. And he says, surely there is a vein for the silver and a place for the gold where they refine it. Iron is out of the earth, brass He setteth an end in darkness and searcheth all the perfections, stones of darkness and the shadow of death. No. Man wants all this treasure? No. He says, he searches out all perfection. In other words, he searches everywhere for stones in the darkness and shadow of death. The flood breaketh out of the inhabitant, even the waters are forgotten of the foot. They are dried up and they are gone away from men. As for the earth, out of it cometh bread. Under it, it is turned up as it were fire. Now, Job is making a discourse about finding the man's pleasure in the material things of the world here. He says, as for the earth, out of it cometh bread. Under it, it's turned up as it were fire. The stones of it are the place of sapphires. And you have dust and gold. Speaking, all these are things you dig out of the earth, the jewels, the gold, the iron ore, you search for things, searching for the wealth of this world. And that's what man does, right? Everybody searches for wealth. Everybody wants wealth. By the way, why does people go to a job, go to college? Get a good education. Why do you need a good education? Oh, I want to get a good job. What's a good job? Well, I got to make money. I make more if I go to college. By the way, you make a lot more if you be a plumber, be an electrician. Boy, them boys make some money. I mean, them boys, I can tell you, certain these plants now, and that's not in the South. And even now they can make $35 an hour. Mechanics, they need them. They're so valuable, you know. But digging for things in the earth, finding treasures. He says, verse 7, there is a path which no fowl knoweth, which the vulture's eye hath not seen, the lion's whelp hath not trodden it, nor the fierce pass by. In other words, there's a path nobody knows about. He putteth forth his hand upon the rock. He overturneth the mountain by the roots. He cutteth out rivers among the rocks. And his eye seeth everywhere a precious thing, searching for the great material things of this world. He bindeth the floods from the overflowing, and the thing that is hid bringeth he forth to light. Searching for the diamond in the rough, searching for all the wonderful things of life. He's speaking of how a man searches. Now, he's just giving a discourse on this is how man really is. And Job is speaking from the right platform. As we listen to him over the next few, and that's why I'm going through these chapters rather quickly, because Job is just giving a platform and saying, I got the right way to look at this. You guys are hypocrites. Let me tell you who God is. I retain my integrity. I know who I am. I'm telling you the truth. You stand up and you say, I know what the Bible says. Here's what it says, brother. Love you. But preacher, that's your wife. Don't leave your wife and kids. Why do you don't love them anymore? I had that question one time, and I simply said, what does the scripture say? Even so, men must love their wives as their own bodies. It's a commandment of God. You got to love her. What if I don't? Well, you're in disobedience to God. That's a sin. You might not make it in. You better get right with God. You got to love her. Well, how do you do that? You better ask God. Don't ask me. But God made that statement. But people think it's an option. By the way, have you noticed that? God doesn't make options. He doesn't give options. God doesn't say, well, you can do this way or this. No, you're going by my son. Either heaven or hell, one or the other. You'll go this way or not. Which way are you going to go? They're out in the middle of the children of Israel already before they got out hardly nowhere. They got out there to suck it, and all of a sudden, what happened? You got a pillar of cloud. Where are we going? That's 110 degrees here today. Wherever that cloud goes, we follow that cloud. You got to follow him, right? What are they learning? Wherever he says to go, you better do it. God doesn't give options, by the way. God, people tell me, well, God's got a permissive will. Don't you ever believe it. God has never had a permissive will. It's called mercy. Never is a permissive will. Preachers will say that God's got his perfect will, and then there's disobedience. But he's got a permissive will. If you do wrong, he'll let you take this place. No, brothers and sisters. That's called God's mercy. God has always wanted his own way. Let's stop there, brother. We'll pick up there next week. 11. Verse 11. Let's stop there. Yeah, God has one way. And what is Job is saying? I can tell you how men are. Men want money. They'll dig it. They'll turn over a rock. They'll turn over a mountain to find it. They'll go through the waters. the silver, the gold, the iron ore, they want all the money. That's the way people are. That's the way man always has been, right? We always want more money. And if we got more money, we're going to be happier. And people get our age, we're like, boy, we was happy back yonder, weren't we? We were. Didn't have it, But do you remember when you was young? Didn't have much money at all. But people would get together, have a fish fry. Yeah. I mean, and it was like, I can remember back, tying up the back at night. It was like a party. Because everybody be sitting around talking and they'd be laughing and caring, but working as hard as they could, but they'd have a good time. How many times have we been there? Taking off that tobacco, putting it on a sheet, and we just talking about so-and-so, solving life problems. Didn't realize that. It's a good deal. All right, let's stand and have a word of prayer and be dismissed. Lord willing, we'll be back on Sunday night. We'll see you tomorrow night. And tomorrow night we'll be back up in the